I'm an autism awareness angel, making sure my wings protect the different, the stranger than. I'm an autism awareness angel. It's good, cause I'm cool with the unique behavior. I'm an autism awareness angel. Will you accept me? Cause I accept you. I'm an autism awareness angel, cause the view from the spectrum is a better point of view. The question at hand.
Hello, I'm Tally, and welcome back to Autism 30. We are recording this second part of Mr. Alexander Magnussen's podcast from the beautiful PAFN's Good Life Fitness Hub, located in Richmond, British Columbia, Canada. I hope you enjoyed the first part, dated February 15th, and are looking forward to hearing his brilliant answers to various questions that he's been asked at his various public speaking engagements. He is very cognizant that he speaks from his own experience and that the old adage, if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism, and all are different and have different varying needs. Now, before the podcast starts, we also want to remind you of two items. The first, if you have questions that you'd like answered from our parent panel, please send them in by going to our website at autism30.com and click the word contact. You never know, you may hear your question answered on air. And the second, if you would like to receive our monthly newsletter letting you know about the information from our past podcast guests and their events for that month, go to our website again at autism30.com and go down to the bottom of that page and click the word subscribed. And don't forget, you can also unsubscribe at any time. Now, let's get back to the second part of the interview with Mr. Alexander Magnussen. Enjoy. So I know one of the questions that came out is about meltdowns, and what does it actually feel from your perspective, what a meltdown feels like?
Well, for me, and again, I'm just one person with autism, so please take it with a grain of salt. For me, I get all sweaty. I get it's like going to a rock concert with people poking you, people touching your eyes, and it's about all of the sensory stuff. The five senses all attack you at once, like a volcano, and you can't get the volcano out, and it's burning inside of you, and it's just so overwhelming. It's definitely like your eyes hurt, your body hurts, but not the type of hurt like you scratched yourself, but it's like you scratched yourself inside your body, and you scratched yourself inside your eyes, and your sense of touch gets so heightened that your clothes hurt you, your shoes hurt you, the bottom of the ground hurts you from touching it with your feet. Inside your shoes.
So this is a physical
This is
experience.
a very, very, very physical reaction that, and you see the meltdown, what it looks like, but it's about half of what it looks like from the inside out.
So for those of you out there that are observing a meltdown or with somebody that's having a meltdown, would you say a good piece of advice would be mindful of the fact that the person experienced the meltdown is going through a type of trauma at that point?
I would say
support them?
absolutely. It is definitely a trauma-inducing event.
So to as I've seen it unfortunately happen, to get comments from passerbys to
Oh, that's
yell,
not helpful. Yeah, no, that's not helpful.
And
one thing that we, as a person with autism, is we get very embarrassed. We get very ashamed of because we know that we're being quote unquote bad or not behaving as our ABA would like us to behave, or, all of that stuff. And we really, there's a lot of shame that comes into that. And we know that it embarrasses our moms and dads, because we see, we hear the comments of control your child and all of those, so. And we want our parents and people around us to be proud of us. And, so the whole thing of shaming the parents shaming the person with autism themselves is very sad and unnecessary.
And I'm really happy that you mentioned it. And I know myself as a parent, those comments also aren't helpful.
No, they're not helpful.
And they're often from either ignorant people that just want to have their say,
Yeah.
or clearly misinformed
I think if people really realized, what it's like, having a child with autism, what it's like having autism yourself, then I think there would be a lot more compassion and what can we do to help instead of you should do this.
And I couldn't agree more. Now, another thing that comes up is people ask you about sensory.
Yes.
What could you say to our audience about sensory issues and autism?
Well, for me, my sense of hearing is very acute. My sense of touch, especially my hands, are extremely sensitive. So one of the things that I am just not able to touch is regular paper.
Okay.
I do not touch it. I've spent 12 years trying to touch it through school, and it never worked out. And it feels like a hot burner. I would guess.
Wow.
Yes. So you wouldn't ask anyone to touch a hot burner. So paper is a no for me. And I do have custom earplugs that I wear mostly all the time. So those are the two things that really affect me on my day-to-day living.
And so if a parent has a child with sensory needs that they're sensitive to noise or sensitive to touch, what would you advise them?
Well, it all depends on what it is, and if it's a sense of smell, sometimes it's really hard to hide a sense of smell if they're acutely aware of different smells. I would say, like for hearing, I would say if you could get some earplugs. There's the big industrial earmuffs that I've had for years. They've worked really well, but they're very noticeable. So I would say if you could go to a hearing doctor place, I don't know the correct term.
Audiologist?
There you go. And get your child's or adult's hearing tested, and then there is customized earplugs that they can put in, and they work wonderful, and I have them, and they're
That's wonderful to note. I actually didn't know that was a possibility, so thank you for
I
that.
didn't know it was a possibility either, and then somebody came up and was like, you should get earplugs for that, and I'm like, okay.
Because my son has the big
I do too,
headphones,
yes.
so
Yeah.
that's really...
I can show you them later.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd love to see them. And also about eye contact.
Oh, yes. Eye contact is a big one. The reason why we are so uncomfortable with eye contact is that it is like you are poking our eyes when we're looking. Your eyes are poking our eyes. And it's a physical sensation that we feel, and it's extremely uncomfortable. So I don't do eye contact. You may see out of the corner of my eye or out of the corner of your eye that I'm actually looking at your eyes, but as soon as you look at my eyes are down again.
I know. I'll try to stop.
Oh no, it's fine. I know that is social typical behavior.
Yes.
So I adapt.
So,
I try.
So what you're basically saying with the eye contact is just because somebody isn't looking at you directly in the eye doesn't mean that you're not listening to what the person is saying.
Absolutely. Eye contact has zero to do with what my hearing is. They're two different senses.
So when teachers I know and people that don't know about autism a lot, they will often tell a child, look at me in the eye when I'm talking to you. What do you think about that statement?
It just makes me shudder because that was my life. Please stop saying that.
And you want to know what? I'm really glad that you mentioned that, because I know my child from, people that don't mean anything by it will often say that. And I know your little is exactly what my child does without the words associated.
Yes.
But that's a beautiful.
It's just don't ask them that. I promise you they're still listening. We have a lot in our minds in one time. It may take a minute for our brains to catch on. Okay, I actually have to listen to what she's saying. hopefully my other stuff in my brain will go into the background a bit so I can pay attention.
Absolutely. And something else that parents, and I'm sure you get a lot of questions about fidgeting and
Yes.
fidget spinners and
Oh, I love them.
and so what can you tell parents?
I think they're great to have. I know for me, they help me concentrate. I know with some people, it's a distraction where all they do is focus on that. So I would say maybe if there was a different kind of fidget spinner or fidget something that they can, because a fidget spinner is really there to enhance and help and aid you concentrating on what needs to be the thing that being concentrated on. So for me, if I got something in my hands, which I actually don't right now, which is kind of surprising, but it's just there to keep my hands busy enough so I can pay attention and go, okay, I still need to pay attention to what I'm doing right now. It's just there to aid.
And that's really important, meaning that just because your child has something in the hand doesn't mean they're not focusing on what the teacher's saying, and doesn't mean they're unable to do the work that they're doing. It's just an aid to keep you focused.
It's just a prompt.
And is that kind of like, I know I like TV on in the background. And
Yeah. A lot of people say that it's kind of like the same, like the TV in the background or just a radio on or something like that. It's but because we're so physical and we need, or not physical, but our senses are so heightened, so we need something physical to often help our brain to go, okay, pay attention. Oh, okay, pay attention.
And that's really a nice way of putting it. Now, I know you talked about this, and I think it's really important to note, and I want to thank you for looking absolutely beautiful for the interview. I feel rather underdressed myself. It's something that you speak about, which I think is important. Speak about dignity and autism.
Dignity and autism is well, first of all, the person with autism is a person, and or a child with autism is still just a child. Adult with autism, just an adult. But it's also how the person dresses, how the person is conducted in their life, and how other people interact with them with dignity. And I'm a grown man, and people make sure that they speak to me like I'm a man, and they don't speak to me like I'm a child. And, if I'm not looking, presentable, they'll go, oh, hey, Al, tuck your shirt in, or, you have food on your shirt. That's kind of common, Okay. Oh, thank you for that. So, and then there are people that quote unquote don't care what they look like. But I think it's their job as an educator or as a staff or as a parent to have your kid dress just like everyone else, and have the if they're wearing sweatpants and really ugly sweatpants, I call them group home pants.
Well, why do you call them group home pants?
I lived in 4 group homes, and I understand it's really they're easy to take on and off, and they're if you have issues taking with buttons and snaps and stuff like that,
Yes.
it is the way to go. But there are pants out there these days that I call them high class group home pants, and they're jean material, but they don't have any buttons and stuff like that on them.
Yes.
And I highly recommend. They're in many stores, high class group home pants.
And so basically what you're saying, sorry, I don't think I'll ever forget that quote. That's a really good one, is take pride.
Take pride in your child's appearance, even if they don't mind. You really want them to be able to fit in, and like for me, I was definitely the kid that flapped all the time. I was always stimming, always moving, and I didn't want to be that weird kid that looked like he looked like he was crazy, because I was an very active kid, and
Yes.
Where not one person could say he's a bad dresser. That weird kid that flaps all the way, but he's a good dresser.
Yeah, and I love it. I mean, being from Montreal, where fashion is definitely important, I completely understand, and that's actually an excellent thing for people to hear, because I know uh, when you dress well, you also feel
You
good about.
feel better. Yes, there was one person in my one of my group homes that he you would look at him, and he was just such a good dresser, and he always felt so good about himself, and he wasn't able to talk, but he would always point to his clothing, and and we'd be like, yes, you look really good, and he had so much pride in it. It was so many people have so much pride in their appearance, even if they don't look like they would have pride in their appearance.
And you want to know what? I'm really happy that you mentioned that point. And I know that the person who inspired you, and I know when I went to your lecture, you spoke about her so beautifully, as your mother.
My mom, yes.
And I know you had wonderful stories to say about her. I was wondering if you could share a story with us here today.
Oh, sure. Well, what story? Well, I know that my mom always wanted me to, she'd always say, when you're 25, you're going to be able to live on your own, and you're going to be able to do this, and you're going to be able to function in your world and be, whatever, and you're going to be able to handle your world. And, she didn't care if I was going to be a doctor or, that's just not in the cards for me.
Yes.
I am not going to be a scientist.
Yes, and I'm sure you're intelligent enough to be a scientist. It might not just be something that you choose to do.
That's right. Thank you.
Absolutely. Now, what other stories do you have about your mother, or is that?
Well, I know that my mom. It was really interesting because my mom would always want me to be socialized, and she'd always say, when you're 25, you're going to be able to socialize with people, and you're not going to have your chickens your whole life. Turns out I had my chickens for most of my life. But anyways, so she would invite people over, like other kids over, and we would all have spaghetti, and she'd be like, okay, everyone is going to eat without utensils. And one of my issues definitely back then was nothing could be on my face, nothing could be on my hands, nothing could be on my face, like makeup, paint, food, especially food. And she would go, okay, and then all the other kids would be like, sweet, we get to eat without utensils. And I would be like, oh my goodness, why? And then to normalize it, it's gonna happen. It's okay that it happens. Your world is not going to fall apart when it happens. And bringing the other kids over made it, other kids are your kids' best examples. They know how to be a kid because they're kids. They know how to teach your kid how to be a typical kid, because they are typical kids. And getting great examples of kids together, and this way you have a buddy for life. Hopefully, I know my best friend of 20-something years. She was at one of my very first spaghetti parties, and she still is one of my bestest friends now. So it's, it really can last a lifetime, friendships.
And I think one of the beautiful things, and correct me if I'm wrong, that your mom did for you was the fact that she clearly set high expectations for you.
Absolutely.
And really reinforced those beliefs in you from a very early child.
Very early on. It was very, it wasn't, oh, my poor kid can't do this, my poor kid can't do that. It's, well, you can't do that yet, but maybe if I teach you, I educate, I get good examples around, that may happen. It may not, but it may happen, and never just settling.
And also, one of the things that I absolutely love, that I know unfortunately some parents do this to their children because of the fact that they might seem that when they invite people over to their house, they're concerned over the child's behavior, so they isolate the child. What your mother did is not only not isolate, you welcomed the world into your home.
Oh, she shoved the world into my home.
And I think that's a really
I do too. All of the things that, because I would I would grab my friends by the arm and drag them outside and lock the door. And and then my mom would be like, "Oh my goodness, don't do that." And "Oh, he's okay. It's just one of his things. You know, he thinks you're a school friend and not a home friend." And then eventually, the kids, there was like, there'd be up to 4 or 5 kids in the house at any one time, made it out of it as a game. It wasn't Al doesn't like me. It was Alex is playing a game. He's going to lock you outside, and then your other friend is going to unlock the door, or you run around the house to the back door and get in and line up and to get kicked out again.
So she was really amazing, even working the whole scenario.
It was life is a game and life is a joke and it's funny.
And I love that. And the other thing that I absolutely loved, which I think, including myself, we could all learn from, is when your child has a sensory issue or something, to challenge it, not just give in to it.
Absolutely. Because at 20 years old, at 40 years old, you're going to have food on your face. You're going to have people in your world. You're going to be an adult. And it's better to do it when they're real young, so then they can get used to it, so they can have even more years of getting used to it.
Absolutely. And I think that's brilliant. And I myself as a parent, I know that I definitely learned that from you earlier on. And I think that's absolutely a keynote that for people listening out there to really take note of: high expectations, welcoming the world in, and challenge sensory issues with your children.
Yes.
So thank your mom for giving you that
She
input.
did a great job.
To be able to share it with us today.
I will.
And what other factors do you believe helped you become the man that you are today?
I would say that a lot of what really made me today is supporting. I got a lot of support when I was young from my mom. I got a lot of support I get a lot of support now from Team Alex. And it's just that support around me that really, they help me with my goals. They help me be comfortable in my day-to-day living. I think predictability and routine is super key. What has helped me. But that early intervention and that early socialization is the core of what it really helped me to be who I am today.
What do you believe your purpose or your major goal in life is?
I would definitely say that my main purpose for my life is educating people on what it's like to have autism, and to help try and speak for people that aren't able to speak for themselves.
And when did you realize that you would make an excellent public speaker?
Well, it's kind of funny because I never really expected to be a public speaker at all. I never really spoke up a lot about how I was feeling, never mind advocating for somebody else. I was living on my own at the time, and my staff at the time was going to a conference, just a mini conference, an in-house conference, and they're like, "Would you like to come? And you can, walk in circles in the back." And I love walking in circles; it's part of my stimming. Literally walking in circles. Yes, you.
Yes.
And then they were saying something that I didn't agree with, but I was just like, that doesn't really make sense. So I said why it didn't make sense to me, and I forget what even the topic was. And they were so impressed of what I said that they're like, "Oh, well, you need to say it to the whole group." And I was like, "Well, no, I don't remember what I said, and no, don't be silly." And then I didn't know what I said, so I said something completely on the same topic, but completely different. And they're like, "Wow, you really need to be an advocate, and you need to be a public speaker." And I was like, "No, you're crazy."
No, they're not.
And,
not at all.
And then I got booked for a classroom in an elementary school in Vancouver. And I did just a short little speech, and the kids loved it, and the teacher loved it, and it kind of grew from there.
And you all, on your face, you look so surprised, which shocks me, because when I saw you, it's so beyond professional, educational, and wonderful that it shocks me that you're shocked.
Yeah, it still shocks me. Every booking, I'm just like, yes, that's awesome. But wow. And it's, I don't know when when I'll be like, okay, I finally got there, but I'm hoping.
Well, I think you're there now, but I'll ask you the following question.
I hope so.
What do you love about public speaking, and why do you think advocacy is so important?
Advocacy is really important, not only for the autism community, but for all of the community, is like the disability community, because we're still, there's still not the most known about us. There's still a lot more education, and what better education can you get from people that live that experience? And then you got the population of the people with disabilities that not a lot of people can really advocate for themselves as well as they need to for other people to listen to them. And it's just, I don't know. I think that it's just my passion, and I'm good at it.
Yes, you are. Very good.
I think that was the first time I've ever said that I'm actually good at it, but I am good at it.
Yes,
I'll
you
let
are.
myself have that.
Good, you should. And what misconceptions, because I know you do this, do you believe exist that you would like to see eradicated about autism?
That I would like to think that, and again, this I would say that if you know one person with autism, you only know one person with autism. Not all of us are the exact same. There are many opposites with people, just like anyone else. We are people first. We really would like, we're not all like Rain Man.
Thank you. Yes. And
I do not count toothpicks, and nor do I care.
And I'm sure that that going to a casino for you doesn't interest you either.
No, it really doesn't.
Now, what message do you want your audience to receive from your lectures and your voice?
I think it would be really cool if I could, maybe change one person's opinion on autism in general, maybe their hopes and dreams for their child. I would love to go, well, Al did it, and he went through some hard times, and, maybe my child may not be, I don't know, maybe the passion is not being a public speaker, but maybe the passion is just, the kid is going to be okay,
And I think you clearly deliver that message, which is nice. If that's your goal,
that's really all my goal.
And that's beautiful. Now, you've spoken about historical discrimination in the media in the past. What are your thoughts on it, and what would you like to tell our audience about it? We hope you've enjoyed the second part of the interview with Mr. Alexander Magnussen. And if you'd like to contact him, all of his details will be on our webpage at autism30.com. And if you're listening to us on iTunes, don't forget to write a review and tune in on March 15th for the finale with this brilliant man. This is Tally telling you to live and love.
Hey yo, I'm a autism awareness